Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. Today is Monday, August 26, 2019. Crazy weekend of sports. Baseball, NFL, Little League World Series. We're going to go over a big injury in baseball. Week 1 college football gets the lines. And my best bet of the day. But we have to start with the most shocking sports story we've had in a long time. And we thought this year was crazy, with a lot of NBA player movements and shocking trades, but nothing tops this in terms of the shockwaves of this story. Andrew Luck, the franchise quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, announces that he's retiring. Like, what are the chances of that happening? He's been dealing with a lot of injury issues over the past few years, and he was sat out this preseason due to an ankle and calf injury, and I guess Luck just knew that he was never going to be the same, and he made this decision not because he wanted to stop playing football, it's because he had to, pretty much, he said, and it's a life decision, not really a football decision, and it is just a tough blow for the sport. Obviously a huge blow for the Colts going forward, and it's just very unfortunate. We'll talk about Luck's career first. Obviously, number 1 overall pick in 2012. In his rookie season, he led the Colts to the playoffs, and then they lost in the first round in Baltimore against the Ravens. Ravens ended up winning the Super Bowl that year. His second year, they win the division. They had that awesome come-from-behind win against the Chiefs, and then they lose in the next round against, I believe it was the Patriots. And then in 2015, they beat the Bengals in round 1 and Andy Dalton. And who doesn't beat Andy Dalton in the playoffs, honestly? And then they win at the Broncos as a huge underdog. I believe they were like a 10-point underdog in Denver against the Peyton Manning-led Broncos. And they upset them, and then they face the Patriots in the AFC title game. And then they get their asses kicked. And that was obviously the Deflategate game. So many people are going to put asterisks by that game. Although the Colts lost that game by a landslide. It was like a 45-7 type of defeat. And then he was injury prone the next few seasons. And the Colts didn't even make the playoffs in the 2015-16 season. And then the 2016-17 season, they missed out on the playoffs. 2017-18, obviously Luck missed that entire season. Jacoby Brissett started most of the games. He had the torn ligament, so that's why he missed the 2017 season. And he came back last year and led the Colts to a playoff berth after starting the season. I believe it was 1-5. They climbed out of that hole, had an easy schedule, and wind up making the postseason. And then they lost in the playoffs against the Chiefs, and they did win a playoff game. They won at Houston against Deshaun Watson and the Texans, and then in the second round is when they got their butts kicked by the Chiefs in a cold weather game. Patrick Mahomes obviously was the best quarterback in the league last year. He's the best quarterback in the league right now, and now in this preseason he's dealing with all these injuries, and then he unexpectedly announced his retirement on Saturday night, and I legit thought that it was a fake Adam Schefter tweet, and I had to double check it 5 times to make sure it was the verified Adam Schefter, and it was, and the shockwaves around the sport was just incredible, and dirty job by the Indianapolis fans, by the way, booing Andrew Luck as he's walking off the field in the preseason game that's going on at the time when Schefter broke the report, a home game, obviously, and then obviously all the fans know because of social media nowadays, and he was heavily booed walking off the field by his own fan base. That was really wrong of the Colts fans. That was very dirty, and it's just disrespectful. And I get it, it's frustrating, but you have no right to boo the guy. That was just very wrong, and that really just hurts. And Andrew Luck flat out said, I'm not lying about this, but obviously I heard them boo, and he felt hurt by that, and I don't blame Luck for feeling hurt by the booing of the Colts fans. And now going forward, I was going to pick the Colts to go on a deep playoff run. I was going to pick them to win the division. I had them penciled in as my number one seed in the AFC. And I legit was going to pick them to win the Super Bowl this year because of luck and because of the talent around him. And that's obviously not going to be the case anymore with luck not there. So I have to redo my predictions and pick a new playoff team, pick somebody else to win the AFC South, and pick one new playoff team. So I have to do that. And then going forward, I don't see a world where the Colts finish above 500. Maybe 7-9, 6-10 if the schedule breaks right for them. And if Marcus Mariota is not healthy, obviously the Colts have more talent than the Tennessee Titans do. And maybe if the Nick Foles experiment doesn't work out in Jacksonville, maybe there's a couple wins there, and maybe they catch a few schedule breaks, the Colts, and they end up going like 6-10, 7-9. But I can also see a world where they finish with one of the worst 5 records, and they're in position to draft a new quarterback, like Alabama's Tua Tagovailoa, or even Oregon's Justin Herbert, or Georgia's Jake Fromm, or somebody like that. And maybe if they like what they see from Jacoby Brissett this year, who is obviously replacing Andrew Luck as of right now, maybe they can wait a year and flat out tank for Trevor Lawrence in the 2020 NFL season when Lawrence comes out. So that would be like the 3rd time in the last 30 years in which the Colts would take the best quarterback, like the most hyped quarterback. Obviously, it was Peyton Manning in 98, Andrew Luck in 2012, and it may be Trevor Lawrence in 2021. That'd be funny if that were the case. But you never know with this kind of stuff, and you just can't take anything or anybody for granted, and the Colts took Andrew Luck for granted. They obviously didn't build a winner around Luck. Last year, that was his best roster, and in this year they made some improvements. Their offensive line's better. They found some nice pieces on defense in the draft. Obviously, they hired a better general manager, and he really changed that team and started building Andrew Luck an offensive line. And before the new general manager came in, Chris Ballard, the previous GM, Ryan Grigson, absolutely failed. He kept picking bust after bust. He traded in a first rounder for Trent Richardson, who was one of the bigger busts in the NFL over the last decade. So the Colts just simply failed to build a legit Super Bowl contender around Andrew Luck, and it certainly doesn't help the Colts in any way of the imagination that Tom Brady was and is still playing at a very high level. That pretty much hurts everybody in the AFC. And it's just unfortunate that Luck's career had to come to an end, and I feel very bad for him and for the players on the Indianapolis Colts. It really hurts some fantasy guys such as T.Y. Hilton, Jack Doyle, the tight end, and the running back I think would be fine because a quarterback really doesn't affect the running back stats. It's more of a wide receiver tight end deal in terms of fantasy. So if you have T.Y. Hilton on your fantasy team or planning on drafting him, I would give it a second thought because of the quarterback drop-off from Luck to Brissett. And by the way, Brissett is not a terrible backup quarterback. He played actually somewhat decent for the Colts, and there's some people saying that he could have been a trade candidate, and that's another thing. I wouldn't rule out the possibility of a trade here. Like, could they go out and trade for the brother of their former quarterback, Peyton Manning, and Eli Manning? I don't think that's going to happen. I do not think the Giants would trade Eli Manning because they want him to spend his whole career in New York. And maybe Dave Gettleman, like if he feels that Daniel Jones is ready to take over, maybe Indy offers the Giants like a 5th round pick for Manning and maybe that can get it done. At least the Giants could get something for Manning, but I don't think the Giants would do it. I just don't think that John Mara would ever consider it, and maybe the Colts think that Manning's done, so I would not think Manning is an option for them. Andy Dalton in Cincinnati, if they feel that they want to move on from Dalton and that Ryan Finley's ready, so that would be an interesting trade option for the Colts if they were to go that route. If they traded for Manning or for Dalton, it's a drop-off from Luck, obviously, but they could still compete and finish above 500 with those guys because of the roster around them. I think Manning could conceivably succeed with a very good offensive line because that's what derailed him in New York over the last 5 years or so and really has put a damper on his career, even though his plays obviously declined as well. Maybe with better support around him, then that could help him. Dalton, I think, if he was their team, maybe they would finish above 500. The same thing with Dalton, could you say about Manning. He's at his best with a good offensive line. And he had a great offensive line in Cincinnati, which really helped that team thrive when they were in making playoff appearances earlier in the decade. And I'm trying to think of any other options. Josh McCown of Philly. If Philly thinks that Carson Wentz is ready, maybe they could do something with him. Ryan Fitzpatrick of the Dolphins, if they feel Josh Rosen's ready. So that would be interesting. Maybe Fitzmagic in Indy. If they had Fitzpatrick, I think that Indy could be 500 or a little better. Because I think that Fitzpatrick has more upside in terms of having better games, but he also has a larger downside than Brissett. Brissett's more of a poor man's Dak Prescott, in my opinion. And Fitzpatrick is somebody that can have a 5-touchdown game or a 5-interception game. So that would be very risky if they pull off a trade for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Maybe the backup quarterback for the Cardinals, Brett Hundley. Maybe Deshaun Kaiser of the Packers, who started for the Browns a few years ago. Maybe they look at somebody like Tyrod Taylor, who played in a playoff game with the Bills a few years ago. So I wouldn't rule out the possibility of Tyrod Taylor on the Colts. But if I'm the Colts, I trade for a quarterback that's somewhat competent around the good roster like Indy, like a Tyrod Taylor, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Those are two guys I think are realistic for Indy if they decide to go that route. Or even Blake Bortles of the Rams. I wouldn't rule that out either. Bortles obviously played on a good team in Jacksonville, but he held them back though, obviously. And that's why the Jags got rid of him. So realistic options for the Colts, in my opinion, are two backup quarterbacks in their own division. Ryan Tannehill of the Titans and obviously a former quarterback in their division, Blake Bortles, formerly of the Jaguars, now of the Rams. I think Dalton is a dark horse. I think it's 0 chance of Manning. And then I mentioned Tyrod Taylor, formerly of the Bills, now of the Chargers, and Deshaun Kaiser, formerly of the Browns, now of the Packers. Brett Hundley, formerly of the Packers, now of the Cardinals. So I think that the Colts have some options. I think they'll trade for somebody's backup. And I think that the most likely is Tyrod Taylor, because I think that the Chargers still feel that Phillip Rivers is an elite quarterback, and I think they plan on paying him. That's the big reason why they haven't paid Melvin Gordon. So we spent 14 minutes on Andrew Luck. So now let's move on to all the baseball from the weekend and just talk about the results from yesterday and look ahead to tonight's games. There are some interesting results yesterday in baseball, some meaningful ones and some upsets. So without further ado, here we go. Orioles over the Rays 8-3. A bad loss for Tampa Bay. They dropped to 76-56. Baltimore improved to 43-88. Dylan Bundy the win. Diego Castillo the loss. Bundy 5 innings, 8 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, rated 4.98. Castillo, 2 innings, 3 hits, an earned run, no walks, 2 strikeouts, ERA 3.48. Braves over to Mets 2-1. Atlanta pulls off the sweep. 80-52. They are Mets for 67-63. Dallas Keuchel the win. Steven Matz the loss. Mark Melancon the save. Keuchel, probably his best game as a Brave. 7 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, ERA 3.78. And going for the Mets yesterday was Steven Matz. He pitched well. 6 innings, 2 hits, and a run, no walk, 6 strikeouts, ERA 4.06. Royals over the Indians, 9-8 in 10 innings. Ryan O'Hearn had a big game. They had a go-ahead home run in the 10th inning, and a big lead, and Indians came back. But the unfortunate news of this game we'll get to in a little while. And KC goes to 46-85. Cleveland 76-55. Ian Kennedy to win. Nick Goody to loss. Jorge Lopez the save. Eric Scoveland, 5 innings, 2 hits, 2 runs, walks, no strikeouts, ERA 3.6. Going for the Indians was Shane Bieber, 7 innings, 6 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts, ERA 3.23. Marlins over the Phillies 2-3. The Marlins are 47-82. Phillies are 67-62. Alicia Hernandez the win. Aaron Nola the loss. Ryan Stanek the save. Hernandez 6 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs, no walks, 5 strikeouts, ERA 4.97. Nola 7 innings, 5 hits, 3 runs, a walk, 7 strikeouts, ERA 3.53. Pirates over the Reds 9-8. Pittsburgh is 55-75. Cincinnati 60-69. Darzell Griezel the win. Trevor Bauer the loss. Felipe Vasquez the save. Argrazel 5 innings, 7 hits, 4 runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, ERA 4.41. Bauer 3 innings, 8 hits, 7 runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, ERA 7.62. He's been awful for the Reds. Astros over the Angels 11-2. Houston winners of 7 of their last 8, 85-47 on the year. LA 63-70. Fomber Valdez the win. Jaime Barria the loss. Valdez 6 innings, 2 hits, an earned run, 5 walks, 8 strikeouts, ERA 5.14. Barria 5 and a third innings, 3 hits, 2 runs, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts, ERA 6.1. Diamondbacks over the Brewers 5-2. Arizona 65-66. Milwaukee 67-63. Robbie Ray to win. Zach Davies the loss. Archie Bradley the save. Ray 5 innings, 3 hits, no runs, 4 walks, 6 strikeouts, ERA 3.86. Davies 4 innings, 4 hits, 4 runs, a walk, 3 strikeouts, ERA 3.9. White Sox over the Rangers 2-0. The White Sox are 60-70. Texas is 64-68. Renato Lopez the win. Brian Burke the loss. Alex Colomé the save. Lopez 5 innings, no hits, no runs, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, ERA 5.08. Burke 6 innings, 2 hits, and a run, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts, ERA 0.75. Twins over the Tigers 7-4. The Twins are 75-51. The Tigers are 38-89. Martin Perez the win. Matt Boyd the loss. Perez 6 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, a walk, 5 strikeouts, ERA 4.53. Matt Boyd 6 innings, 4 hits, 7 runs, 5 walks, 7 strikeouts, ERA 4.47. Cardinals over the Rockies 11-4. The Cardinals are 71-58. The Rockies are 58-73. Getting the win for St. Louis was Ryan Helsley. Antonio Senzatella the loss. Michael Wacha 4 2/3 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts for 5.24. Senzatella an inning and 2/3, 5 hits, 6 runs, 2 walks, and a strikeout area 6.75. Nationals over the Cubs 7-5 in 11 innings. The Nats are 73-57. The Cubs 69-61. Daniel Hudson the win. Tyler Chatwood the loss. Steven Strasburg started. 6 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, a walk, 10 strikeouts, ERA 3.63. Cole Hamels 5 innings, 7 hits, 2 runs, a walk, 3 strikeouts, ERA 3.73. Giants over the Athletics 5-4. San Francisco 65-65. Oakland 74-55. Getting the win for San Francisco was Sam Coonrod. Jake Dykman the loss, Will Smith the save. Logan Webb started 4 2/3 innings, 6 hits, 4 runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, ERA 4.66. Brett Anderson 6 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts, ERA 4.08. Padres over the Red Sox 3-1. San Diego is 60-69. Boston 70-62. Joey Lucchesi to win. Brian Johnson the loss. Kirby Yates the save. Lucchesi 5 innings, 3 hits, and a run, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts, ERA 4.11. Brian Johnson 3 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, 2 walks, and a strikeout, ERA 6.83. Mariners over the Blue Jays 3-1. Seattle 56-75. Toronto 53-80. Marco Gonzalez the win. Clay Buchholz the loss. Matt McGill the save. Marco Gonzalez was very good. 7 innings straight, and a run, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, rate 4.17. Clay Buchholz, 6 innings straight, 2 runs, no walks, 3 strikeouts, rate 5.87. Yankees over the Dodgers, 5-1 on Sunday Night Baseball. A huge win for the Yankees. Series win for the Yankees as well. 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. That's very impressive. 85-47 on the year. Dodgers are 86-46, so they still have the best record in baseball by 1 game. Domingo Germán the win. Clayton Kershaw the loss. Germán was good. 6 innings, 5 hits and a run, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, rate 4.03. Clayton Kershaw, 7 innings, 3 runs, no walks, 12 strikeouts, rate 2.76. All right. Today's games at 3 o'clock, you have the Braves at the Rockies. Julio Teheran against Tim Melville. Makeup game, I believe, for that game. ESPN, 7 o'clock, Cardinals Brewers. Huge game in the National League Central. Adam Wainwright against Gio Gonzalez. The Cardinals are in first place right now, and they're on a roll. Their pitching has kind of been inconsistent from a starting pitching standpoint, but their bullpen's very, very good, led by Andrew Miller. Their offense is humming right now. I like the Cardinals a lot. They're a much better team than the Brewers in my mind. And I think the Cardinals will go into Milwaukee and get a win as an underdog tonight. So give me the Cardinals on the road. Phillies host the Pirates. Joe Musgrove and Jason Vargas. Reds Marlins. Sonny Gray and Pablo Lopez. Athletics Royals at 8:15. You got Homer Bailey and Brad Keller. So Homer Bailey makes his return to KC. 9:45 Diamondbacks Giants. Alex Young and Tyler Beede. 10 o'clock ESPN Yankees Mariners. J Happ against the Mariners. Or I should say the Mariners opener. I think the Yankees will go out and win this game on the road. Do I feel good about it? No, because J Happ's their worst starting pitcher. And that's saying something because the rotation isn't that great, and CC Sabathia really hasn't been good this year either, although he's retiring at the end of the year, but he's given them better performances than J Happ has this year. I think the Yankees will win this game in spite of their guy going tonight in J Happ, because the Mariners are just inept. I wouldn't be surprised if Happ has a good game and it goes 7 innings and gives up 3 runs and strikes out 7. That wouldn't surprise me at all, because the Mariners lineup really hasn't been that good since they trade away pieces like Edwin Encarnacion and Jay Bruce. They still got Daniel Vogel back on the team. Mitch Haniger's hurt. Kyle Seager's been fine. And Tim Beckham's suspended. So I think the Mariners are a much worse team than they were earlier in the year. And this is obviously the worst team in the AL West. I think the Yankees will go out there and win, score a lot of runs, and continue the MLB record of 61 home runs hit in the month of August, which is the most home runs in a single month by a team in baseball history. So I think that trend continues. They'll continue to pile on that record. Aaron Judge has been hitting again. That's a great sign for the Yankees. Homered in 3 straight games. Wouldn't rule out a 4th straight game tonight. He's homered in Seattle before. And encouraging that he's doing this on the road, because he has that reputation of just being a great home player and not so great on the road. And it's encouraging that he did a lot of it in Dodger Stadium against the best team in baseball. So give me the Yankees tonight on the road in Seattle. So both road teams win the ESPN games tonight. And then 10 o'clock as well, you have the Dodgers at the Padres. Dustin May against Eric Lauer. By the way, Lauer's pitched very well against the Dodgers this season. All right. Back to NFL for 1 minute. There's an injury in the same division as Andrew Luck's team, or former team, in the Colts. Lamar Miller tore his ACL in the preseason game the other day, so he's out for the season. This is a blow, but not as big as a blow as losing your franchise quarterback, obviously. I think the Texans can get away with this. I still think they will be a good team without Lamar Miller. I think that there's trade options for the Texans, such as Buffalo's LaShawn McCoy or Frank Gore. Maybe New York Giants' Paul Perkins or Rod Smith, because they have some depth behind Saquon Barkley. You can potentially go and get somebody from Philly with all their depth, like Darren Sproles, who I think would fit beautifully in that Texans offense. I still think he has something left in the tank. Washington has running back depth. Do they go and get maybe Adrian Peterson and hand the keys off to Samaje Perine? Other teams with running back depth are the Patriots, who have James White, James Devlin. They're not trading Sony Michel. I think they look at him as the future guy, so maybe James White's an option for them. So there's a lot of teams with some veteran guys that I think the Texans can go to, especially in the NFC East. I know Dallas won't trade away from its running back depth because there's a chance that Zeke doesn't come back. So maybe that's this year's Le'Veon Bell situation. We'll save that for another podcast. So I don't think they would trade with their in-state rival Cowboys, but maybe Giants, Philly, and Washington, who have depth at running back beyond the guys that are slated to start for them. I know Philly really is high on Miles Sanders, so they have some depth behind him. Giants have some depth behind Saquon Barkley that they can deal from, and the same with Washington behind Samaje Perine. And then the Patriots behind Sony Michel, there's depth. And then Buffalo, if they really like Devin Singletary, maybe they could trade Houston, LaShawn McCoy, or Frank Gore. So I think the Texans will trade for a running back before the start of the season, because I don't think that they think that Duke Johnson is the answer to be their starting running back. So it's a loss for the Texans, but I think it's a replaceable loss, unlike Luck with Indianapolis. NFL preseason game. Let's go over some scores from the weekend. Friday night, you had two games. Buccaneers over the Browns, 13-12. Baker Mayfield was not good at all in this game. 10 of 26, 72 yards and an interception. Ryan Griffin, 11 of 17, 121 yards and a touchdown. Jameis Winston wasn't good either. 9 of 19, 88 yards. Blaine Gabbert, 4 for 5, 33 yards. So Gabbert, by the way, another option for Indy, potentially, to go out and get. Possibly as a backup to Jacoby Brissett, maybe, if they decide to go that route. But I don't think Gabbert is somebody who's capable of starting. And we'll get to another team that I think could be, that's in play with the trade partner for the Colts for a quarterback in a second that I just thought of on top of my head. Bills over the Lions, 24-10. This was on TV. Buffalo, Matt Barkley saw a lot of the time, 12 of 14, 142 yards, and a touchdown pass. Josh Allen, 3 for 6, 49 yards. He didn't see much time. Matt Stafford, 12 of 19, 137 yards and a touchdown. So he looked pretty good in this game as well. Saturday, Vikings over the Cardinals, 20-9. Kirk Cousins in this game, 3 for 13, 35 yards. So he stunk, even though it was just a preseason game. Kyle Sloter, 6 of 702 yards and a touchdown. Kyler Murray, 14 of 21, 137 yards. So he was better in this game than he was against the Raiders. Brent Hundley, 15 of 25, 165 yards, so he wasn't bad either. I threw out Hundley as an option for the Colts as in terms of quarterback depth. Cowboys over the Texans, 34-0. Dak Prescott, 2 of 5, 22 yards and a touchdown, so he was okay. And then Deshaun Watson was sacked and did not throw for any yards, so he just was invisible in that game. But I'm not going to overreact. It's a preseason game. Just get out of there healthy. Bears over the Colts, 27-17. Obviously, we talked about the fans booing Luck. Chad Kelly, 16 of 21, 209 yards, a touchdown on the pick. So we did not see Jacoby Brissett in this game. And I think there's a reason why, obviously. Chase Daniel, 3 for 9, 21 yards. We did not see Mitch Trubisky in this game either for the Bears. Tyler Bray, 11 of 16, 136 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Saints over the Jets, 28-13. Drew Brees looked like the Drew Brees of old, 68 yards and a touchdown pass. Teddy Bridgewater, 15 of 26, 143 yards. Maybe that's a guy that Indy can go out and get. I want to rule out Teddy Bridgewater. And Taysom Hill, 8 of 13, 127 yards. And I think the Saints are higher on him than Bridgewater internally. Sam Darnold looked good, 8 of 13, 97 yards and a touchdown pass. He's had a very good preseason for the Jets. 49ers over the Chiefs, 27-17. Jimmy Garoppolo with a bounce-back performance, 14 of 20, 188 yards and a touchdown pass. Nate Mullins, 8 of 11, 84 yards. Maybe Mullins is somebody that the Colts can go after, or even C.J. Beathard. So the 49ers have quarterback depth that they can trade from, and maybe if Indy can get one of those two backups for Jimmy Garoppolo, and San Francisco can get a good player in return or a good draft pick potentially from the Colts. And Pat Mahomes, 8 of 10, 126 yards and a touchdown pass. He's been great in the preseason. And Kyle Shermer, 9 of 12, 67 yards. Rams over the Broncos, 10-6. You did not see Jared Goff. Starting in this game for the Rams was Brandon Allen, 12 of 19, 162 yards. Denver, you did not see Joe Flacco. You saw Brett Ripon, 14 of 23, 80 yards and an interception. Kevin Hogan, the former Stanford product, 8 of 12, 69 yards. Seahawks over the Chargers, 23-15. Geno Smith, 11 of 18, 117 yards. I don't think he's an option for Indy because he stinks. Russell Wilson, 6 of 9, 73 yards. So he looked awesome, or pretty good, I should say. No Phillip Rivers in this game. You saw Easton Stick, 12 of 16, 82 yards and a touchdown. Tyrod Taylor, 6 of 9, 61 yards. I think that's a realistic option for Indy. Cordell Jones, 4 of 5, 50 yards. So I don't think you'll see a lot of Cordell Jones in the season, but I just don't love him, and I don't think he's an option for Indy either. Steelers over the Titans, 18-6. Ben Roethlisberger made his first appearance in the preseason, 8 of 13, 63 yards and a touchdown, so he looked like he was in midseason form. Mason Rudolph, 6 of 9, 75 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Josh Dobbs, 4 of 9, 79 yards and a pick. Marcus Mariota wasn't good, 0 for 3 and sacked once. Didn't throw for any yards or touchdowns. Ryan Tannehill, 6 of 9, 62 yards. And Logan Woodside, 11 of 15, 117 yards. And that was on Sunday night. Preseason week 4 begins on Thursday, and there's no games on any of the other days. Everybody plays on Thursday for their preseason finales, and I don't think you'll see any big names going. Personally, I think you'll just see backup quarterbacks battling for backup quarterback jobs. Maybe Daniel Jones starts for the Giants, so that would be exciting to see a whole half of Daniel Jones. Maybe Dwayne Haskins starts for Washington, so you'll see a whole half of them in the Redskins with Haskins. So that's possible too. Little League World Series concluded this weekend. It was fun. On Saturday, you had Croatia upset Japan 5-4 as they moved on. And in Louisiana over Hawaii 9-5. Championship game. Louisiana defeats Croatia 8-0. That was such a great performance by Louisiana. They are such a great team. They had some obstacles to overcome, and they lost, I believe, their first game, and they came from behind to win this. They actually were in an elimination game against Jersey. They overcame that. Jersey wasn't a bad team in their own rights. So good for Louisiana for stepping up and winning this thing. I thought you were going to see Hawaii and Japan in the championship game, but they played for third place, and Japan came out on top 5-0. So Japan came in third, and then Hawaii came in fourth. And it was such a fun tournament. You got to see some possible future stars in a lot of these, and you saw siblings of guys that are in the big leagues, like Rodgett Odor of the Rangers, I believe, had a sibling in this, and so did Jurickson Profar of the Athletics. I know Profar did, maybe Odor did too, who knows, but I thought I heard that Odor had a sibling in this as well. A baseball injury I want to talk about real quick before I get to guess the lines for week 1 of the college season. Jose Ramirez broke his hand, and he's out for a month. That is a huge blow for the Indians. I think their division hits take a hit, and let's face it, their playoff hopes take a hit as well. I think that Oakland and Tampa could pass them, potentially, if their offense goes cold. I don't think they'll miss the playoffs, but I think this will cost them the American League Central because Jose Ramirez was the driving force of the Indians' turnaround, and his turnaround coincided with the Indians' turnaround. So, huge loss for the Indians' offense. You need guys like Franmil Reyes, Yasiel Puig, Francisco Lindor, Carlos Santana to step up in Ramirez's absence. Roberto Perez has had a career year behind the plate. Oscar Mercado's been a revelation for Cleveland. He'll be top 10 for the American League Rookie of the Year. And obviously their pitching has to step up in Ramirez's absence too, such as Shane Bieber, Zach Plesac, and those guys. And their bullpen has been pretty good all year, especially since their turnaround, although Brad Hand has imploded in a couple big spots, such as their game against the Mets about a week ago or so. So we'll see what happens with the Indians, but I think this costs them the Central, but they still make the playoffs. This might actually cost them home field advantage in the wild card game too. I could potentially see that scenario as well, and I think there's an outside chance they miss the playoffs altogether. But if he comes back in late September and the Indians are like a game back of the Twins, that could be a big boost for them to win their division. But I think that the division will be wrapped up by the time he's back. So, huge loss for the Cleveland Indians as the stretch run is on their way in baseball. Guess the lines week 1 of the college football season. This is going to be fun. I love doing this. This is by far my favorite activity to do on the podcast. So, without further ado, here we go. The first game on Thursday night, Cincinnati hosting UCLA. Cincinnati I have as a 3-point home favorite over the UCLA Bruins and Chip Kelly, and Cincinnati is currently favored by 2.5. So I was off by a half point to start the official week 1 of the college football season in terms of guessing the lines. Wagner and UConn. I have UConn slated as a favorite of 22 points. And UConn is favored by 17.5. So I was off there by 5.5 points. So now my bookie is showing me lines for the FCS against FBS teams. So that's pretty good. Next up is Albany and Central Michigan. I have Central Michigan as a 35.5 point favorite. They're favored by only 14. Yikes. So they are not sold on Central Michigan, and that's not a good look for them at all. I actually had Central Michigan finishing last place in their division in the season. Morgan State and Bowling Green. I have Bowling Green favored by 34.5, and Bowling Green is favored by 21.5. So I was off by 13 points on that one. So Bowling Green, they have more confidence in Central Michigan. Maybe they feel better about Albany than they do about Morgan State as well. Buffalo hosts Robert Morris, and I have Buffalo as a favorite by 44 points, and Buffalo is favored by 48.5. So that's the first time in terms of FBS against FCS where my guess was lower than the actual line. So I was off by 4.5 points there with Buffalo. FAU and UCF on Thursday night. I have UCF favored by 13.5 points. And UCF is favored by... Oh, wait a minute. I totally was off there. Florida A&M is playing Central Florida. I had it penciled in as FAU is playing them. That's a mistake by me. So, Florida A&M, UCF, I would have this slated as a 47-point favorite for UCF without the hook, and they're favored by 47.5. So that was just a very bad misreading by me when I was writing down the schedule. I had FAU, not Florida A&M written down. So UCF favored by 47.5, so I was off by a half point on that one. Central Arkansas and Western Kentucky. I have Western Kentucky favored by 33.5, and Western Kentucky is only favored by 8.5. So that's not a good look for a team like Western Kentucky that they're only a single-digit favorite against a FCS school. Gardner-Webb and Charlotte. I have Charlotte favored by 35. Charlotte's favored by 32.5. So I was off there by, it looks like 2.5 points. So not a horrible guess there. Georgia Tech at Clemson. I have Clemson favored by a whopping 37.5 points. And Clemson is favored by 33.5. So I was off 4 points the other way. So I thought the line would be 4 points bigger than it actually is. So 33.5 is the line for Clemson in the debut of the ACC network. FIU and Tulane. I have Tulane favored by 16.5 points, and Tulane's only favored by 2. That is an absolute steal, getting Tulane at -2 against FIU. Oh my God, that is a lock. I'm just dumbfounded. Oh my God. And I probably should remember that when I do these picks, that I said this was a lock. UAB hosts Alabama A&M, and I have UAB favored by 37.5, and UAB is favored by 42.5. So 5 points off on that one for UAB, and I thought that the line was smaller than that. Texas State and Texas A&M, I have the Aggies favored by 35.5, and the Aggies are favored by 33.5. So 2 points off there with A&M in what should be a not so hard performance for them. South Dakota State and Minnesota, I have Minnesota as a whopping 40-point favorite at home, and Minnesota is favored by only 12.5. Or I'm sorry, it opened at 12.5. It's currently 14. So that's a very small line for the Gophers. I think folks are just too high on South Dakota State, and I think Minnesota is a possible sleeper team this year in the Big Ten. Kent State and Arizona State, I have Arizona State favored by 37 points. And the Sun Devils are favored by 25. So I was a little off on that one. I believe 8 points off. Let's see. No, 12 points off. I said 37. Northern Colorado against San Jose State. I have San Jose State favored by 36 points. I think that is way too high. And it is, because San Jose State's favored by 10.5. So I was over 20 points off on that one. In what is probably the best game of the night on Thursday, Utah at BYU on ESPN. I have the Utes favored by 14, and the Utes are favored by 5.5. So a lot of people really like BYU in what could be an early season upset. So I was off big time. Friday night, Rice against Army. I have Army listed here as a 27.5 point choice over Rice, and Army is favored by 22.5. So that is a big favorite for Army. And like I said, Army's a good team this year. So 5 points off on that one. That's not terrible. Tulsa against Michigan State. I have the Spartans favored by a whopping 44 points. And Michigan State is favored by 22.5. So I really messed up on that one. Over 20 points off. Wisconsin and South Florida. I have the Badgers favored by a whopping 17 points. They're favored by 13. So 4 points off there, so I wasn't off by a lot there in terms of a road favorite against a group of 5 team. UMass and Rutgers. I have Rutgers as a 3-point favorite. This was a tough line to pick. Rutgers is favored by 15.5. That is way too much. Rutgers stinks. And they're the worst Power 5 team. That is way too much for Rutgers to be favored by. Rutgers will probably win this game because what other game could they possibly win? But Jesus Christ. 15.5 is way too many points. And I would love to take Massachusetts against the spread in that one. Utah State, Wake Forest. I have Wake Forest as a 12-point favorite. And Wake Forest is favored by only 3.5. So a lot of folks are high on the Aggies of Utah State. Purdue and Nevada. I have Purdue slated as a 7.5-point road favorite. And they're favored by 10.5. So, not a bad choice by me, but Vegas believes in Purdue more than I do. So, that's that. Colorado and Colorado State, 10 o'clock ESPN Friday night. I have Colorado as a 17-point favorite. They're favored by 13, so 4 points off there for the Buffaloes against their in-state rival. Oklahoma State at Oregon State Friday night on Fox Sports 1. I have Oregon State as a 13.5-point underdog against the Cowboys of Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State is favored by 15. So I was a 1.5 off on that pick. So on to Saturday we go. FAU against Ohio State, 12 o'clock on Fox. I have the Buckeyes as a 35.5-point home favorite against Lane Kiffin's team. And the Buckeyes are favored by 27.5. So I was off on that one a little bit. I thought it would be a bigger line, but so I guess some people are giving Lane Kiffin some respect. And people aren't giving Ryan Day some love either, because I thought this would be a bigger line than that. All right, let's move on. Northern Iowa and Iowa State. Iowa State I have as a 42-point favorite, and the Cyclones are favored by a total of 18.5. So Matt Campbell's team not getting the respect they deserve here. I just am curious about all these lower lines against these FCS schools, so I was well off there. 18.5, and I guessed 42. Nebraska hosts South Alabama. I have Nebraska as a 37-point home favorite, and Nebraska is favored by 36. So I was 1 point off on that one. So that's what I actually did a good job guessing. East Carolina at NC State, I have NC State as a 16.5-point favorite, and that's what the line is. So that was a very good pick by me, and that is just money. That was my first correct pick in week 1. Akron at Illinois, I have Illinois favored by 12.5. Illinois is favored by 17, so Vegas believes in the Fighting Illini more than I do. Indiana and Ball State, I have Indiana favored by a whopping 20 points, and Indiana's favored by 17. So 3 points off on that one. Not bad. Howard at Maryland, I have the Terps favored by 38 points, and the Terps are favored by 29.5. So Maryland, a big favorite, obviously. And my guess was 38, so I was off by 9.5 or so. Kansas hosts Indiana State, and I have the Jayhawks favored by 30. And the Jayhawks are favored by 4.5. So not a lot of respect at all for Les Miles in his Kansas debut. Toledo against Kentucky. I have Kentucky favored by a whopping 25.5, and Kentucky is favored by 11.5. So not a lot of love for Mark Stoops in his season debut either. A very intriguing game, 12 o'clock ABC, Ole Miss against Memphis from Memphis. I have, wait for it, the Tigers of Memphis favored by 2.5 points. And Memphis is favored by 5.5 points. So Vegas believes in them more than I do. And Memphis deserves to be favored in this spot. So good for them. Mississippi State against Louisiana from New Orleans. I have Mississippi State favored by 22.5, and they're favored by 20.5. So a short difference between myself and Vegas. James Madison at West Virginia. I have the Mountaineers favored by 35.5. And West Virginia at home in Neil Brown's debut is a 7-point favorite. So Vegas does not believe in the Mountaineers very much against a good FCS team. Rhode Island at Ohio. Ohio favored by 27.5, and Ohio is favored by 22.5. So not a big gap from what I think than what Vegas thinks. Eastern Washington at Washington. I have the Huskies laying a whopping 45.5. The Huskies are laying 21. So I really did widen these lines with these FCS against FBS teams. This is so weird how the FCS schools are getting so much love from Vegas. I just think it's very, very weird. The Temple Owls host Bucknell, and I have Temple favored by 30.5. Temple's favored by 40.5. So Vegas believes in Temple more than I do. Bucknell must be really bad then. Duke against Alabama. It does feel like at Alabama because Atlanta's like a home field for the Tide. I have Bama favored by 31, and Bama is favored by 35. So 4 points off with the Crimson Tide in their home away from home, Atlanta against Duke. Idaho against Penn State. I have Penn State minus 41. Penn State is favored by 40. So I was off by 1 point. So not terrible. Colgate at Air Force. I have Air Force minus 33. Air Force is favored by 17.5. So Vegas believes in Colgate more than I do. Like I said, I'm underestimating some of these FCS schools. Holy Cross at Navy. I have Navy favored by 35 points. Navy is favored by 20.5 points. So Holy Cross getting some love from Vegas in my estimation. Eastern Michigan at Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina I have as a 3.5 point favorite. Coastal Carolina is favored by, they're getting 6.5. So they really like Eastern Michigan on the road. So I disagree with that line so strongly. I've gotten the correct favored side in every pick so far except for this one. South Carolina, North Carolina from Charlotte on ESPN. I have the Gamecocks laying 10.5 against Mac Brown's team, and I was 1 point off. South Carolina is laying 9.5, so that was a good choice for me. I just think South Carolina is more talented than North Carolina, even though North Carolina probably has the home field in this one in Charlotte. Georgia State against Tennessee. I have Tennessee favored by 22.5. Tennessee is favored by 25.5. So Tennessee getting some respect in Jeremy Pruitt's second season debut. So 3 points separates what I think and what Vegas thinks. East Tennessee State and Appalachian State, I have the Mountaineers favored by 34.5. And that game is not on the board right now, so that sucks. Because Appalachian State's supposed to be one of the better group of 5 teams this year, and I just want to see what that line is. So, well, that sucks. Northwestern at Stanford, I have the Cardinal laying 7.5 at home to start their season, and they're laying 6.5, so 1 point off, and Vegas believes in the Wildcats more than I do and more than Nick Costos does. Portland State at Arkansas. Arkansas favored by 34.5 is my guess, and Arkansas is favored by 28.5, so I was 6 points off on that pick. So not a terrible guess. Montana State at Texas Tech. I have Tech favored by 36.5, and they're favored by 25, so I was well off on the Texas Tech call. Boston College hosts Virginia Tech. Huge game in the ACC. I have Boston College as a 6.5 point home favorite against Virginia Tech, and they're getting 4. Virginia Tech is a road favorite. That is ridiculous in my opinion. I like the Hokies, but that's just a lot of respect for Justin Fuente's team and little respect for Steve Adazio's team. Yikes. Syracuse at Liberty. I have Syracuse as a 21-point favorite, and Syracuse is favored by 17.5. Nick Costos actually told us that line on his show on Friday when I had him on. Sam Houston State at New Mexico. I have New Mexico favored by 27.5, and New Mexico is favored by 9, so Vegas doesn't believe in the Lobos very much, so some pressure on that team this year. Incarnate Word against UTSA. UTSA 25.5 point favorites. UTSA is only favored by 5.5. Yikes. Another yikes. So, Incarnate Word getting some love as a dog. Campbell Troy. I have Troy favored by 33. Troy's favored by 35.5. So, Vegas' line set higher than mine. 2.5 points off. Cal against UC Davis. I have Cal favored by a whopping 35 points. Cal is favored by 13. So, not much love for Cal. VMI against Marshall. I have Marshall favored by 33.5. And Marshall is favored by 40.5. So Vegas believes in them more than I do, and I was 7 points off. Norfolk State at Old Dominion. I have Old Dominion as a 27.5 point favorite, and they're favored by 27. So a good pick by me. A half point off. Alcorn State against Southern Miss. I have Southern Miss by 33. Southern Miss is favored by 26. So I'm off by 7 points on that pick. Illinois State against Northern Illinois. I have Northern Illinois by 32. Northern Illinois is only favored by 5.5. So Vegas does not believe at all. So I am just giving little respect to these FCS schools. It's bad for me. Monmouth against Western Michigan. I have Western Michigan by 34. Monmouth's not a good school in terms of football, and it's showing in the line a little bit. 25.5 is the number for the Broncos of Western Michigan. So I was off by 8.5 points there. SMU at Arkansas State. I have SMU as a 7 point road favorite, and SMU is favored. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Arkansas State's a 2.5 point choice. So, bad pick by me. I gave the wrong side the favorite. Boise State against Florida State from Jacksonville. I have the Seminoles favored by 7.5 in that spot. And the Seminoles are laying 5.5. It's opened at 3, by the way. So, the Seminoles, the line's moving in their favor. Nichols at Kansas State. I have Kansas State favored by a whopping 33.5 points. And Kansas State is laying 23.5. So I was off by 10 points on that pick. Stephen F. Austin at Baylor. Baylor is a 37.5 point favorite. And Baylor is laying 38. So I was off by a half point with the Bears. The Commodores of Vanderbilt are hosting Georgia. That's a tough ask for Vanderbilt. I have Georgia as a whopping 28.5 point, just 28 on the road. And Georgia is favored by 21. So 7 points off with that pick. I gave the Bulldogs a little bit of a push to Vegas. Georgia Southern at LSU. Of LSU favored by a whopping 40.5. I just picked that because I just think LSU is going to get a lot of respect from the vote getters, and I was wrong. They're favored by 28, so off by 12.5 points with the Tigers. Middle Tennessee at Michigan. I have the Wolverines favored by 40.5, and they're favored by 33.5, so a touchdown off with the Wolverines. Oregon against Auburn. I have the Auburn Tigers laying 3 in Arlington, and Auburn is favored by 3.5. It opened at 6.5. Now it trickled down to 3.5. So a lot of people really like Justin Herbert, but I don't know if I like him in this spot in an SEC type of home field advantage down there in Jerry World. Miami of Ohio against Iowa. I have Iowa favored by 37.5. And Iowa's favored by 21.5. So 16 points off with that pick. Missouri at Wyoming. I have Wyoming getting 17.5 points at home. And that's what the line is. So I was correct on that pick with Missouri. So that's my second correct pick on the podcast today. North Texas against Abilene Christian. I have North Texas by 33. North Texas is favored by a total of 20.5 points. So I was 12.5 points off with that pick. Virginia at Pitt. I have that as a pick'em. And the line for that game is Virginia by 2.5. So I was off by 2.5 points on that game. That was a tough one to predict because I know people are high on Virginia this year. Louisiana Tech at Texas. I have Texas by 45, and Texas is favored by 20.5. So Louisiana Tech getting some Vegas love, so I was off by a whopping 24.5 points. Houston Baptist against UTEP. I have UTEP by 26.5. This is probably another way off line. And UTEP's favored by 17.5. So I was 9 points off with that call. Maybe Houston Baptist isn't that good. Arkansas Pine Bluff at TCU. TCU favored by a whopping 44 points. And TCU is favored. It opened at 52.5, so we're going to just go with that. So that line, I was off by 8.5 points. And TCU is believed in Vegas more than me, surprisingly. Grambling at UL Monroe. UL Monroe favored by 28.5 is my pick. Louisiana Monroe is favored by 28.5. So that was my third correct pick on the podcast. Weber State at San Diego State. I have San Diego State by 35.5. And San Diego State's only favored by 7.5. So there's a lot of believers in Weber State. New Mexico State at Washington State. I have the Cougars by 40.5. And the Cougars are favored by 32. So I was 8.5 points off with that pick. UNLV hosts Southern Utah. I have UNLV by 27. UNLV is favored by 24. So off by 3 points with that pick. Fresno State at USC. I have the Trojans by 12.5. I just think that USC, a lot of people are going to bet on them because they're a public team. And USC is favored by 13.5. So I was off by 1 point. And by the way, that line opened at 9.5. And a lot of people were placing their bets on JT Daniels and the Trojans. Sunday night, Houston at Oklahoma, Jalen Hurts' Oklahoma debut, and Daniel Holgerson's coaching debut at Houston. I have Oklahoma as a whopping 34.5-point favorite, and Oklahoma is favored by 23.5. So I was off by 11 points with that line. And Notre Dame at Louisville, 8 o'clock on ESPN. I have Notre Dame favored by 21.5 points, and Notre Dame is favored by 20.5 points. So I was off by 1 point for Notre Dame Louisville. So that's it for Guess the Lines Week 1. Best bet of the day brought to you by FanDuel. So many interesting games to choose from tonight in Major League Baseball. So without further ado, here we go. I'm going to go with the Braves on the road at the Rockies in the makeup game. I'm going to take the Reds at the Marlins in Sonny Gray. I'm going to take Homer Bailey in his return to KC. Don't feel great about that one. And then, how come Yankees Mariners isn't an option? That'd be my third option, but it's not on the board. So I'll just roll with those three. Plus 358 odds. Wagering, I'm going to say a bigger amount. Let's go $4. Payout of $18.33. That's it for the podcast today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping all the baseball games, looking ahead to tomorrow's games. Maybe we'll talk more about the Luck injury and options for them going forward. And obviously I have my best bet for tomorrow as well. We'll have guests on throughout the week offering NFL predictions, and obviously next week as well. Hope you guys have a great day, everybody.